Welcome to summer worship with the Unitarian Universalist community of Charlotte. I'm Jay Leach, one of the ministers of this congregation. You heard from my colleague John Herrick, who is our director of music. Even in these challenging times, or maybe in part because of these challenging times, we're celebrating this summer. Celebrating community, which is the new part of our name. Acclaimed author, professor, and cultural critic Bell Hooks, in a collection of essays she titled Killing Rage, Ending Racism, writes, "Beloved community is formed not by the eradication of difference, but by its affirmation. By each of us claiming the identities and cultural legacies that shape who we are and how we live in the world." At a time when some are stoking the flames of division and divisiveness, we, in our aspiration to become a beloved community, have an audacious commitment. We affirm our differences, the ways our varying backgrounds and prior experiences shape who we are and how we live. Perhaps more audacious and certainly more challenging still, we affirm our religious differences. Affirm and celebrate the ways our lives have been shaped by many different kinds of experiences in many different kinds of religious communities. Many of us in this community are profoundly grateful for the ways other religious experiences and communities have shaped us. Today you'll hear from three of our members who embody our summer theme of celebrating community by celebrating religion's role in shaping their understandings of what community can and should mean. I'm glad you're watching with us today, especially if you're not yet a part of this community. I'm grateful for those of you who continue in your faithful participation in this considerably less than ideal way of being a community in these times. Music is, of course, central to our community. You'll experience that again today from a wide range of religious traditions. The beautiful song that follows, rendered beautifully by singers from our community, invites us to this gathering. Take in this beauty. And while doing so, you may wish to go to our public Facebook page and extend your virtual greetings to one another. Now, if you are a guest, please post a comment there so that you might enjoy the warm messages of welcome from those of us who are regulars here. A warm summer welcome to each of you.
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near.
Hi, we're the Hood family, and we're doing the Chalice lighting ceremony this morning. My name's Colin, and this is Lauren.
And I'm Dylan. We light this chalice on behalf of our community.
We do so today, remembering the light we have found in other places, other religious traditions, other spiritual communities.
We join our light with theirs, that the world might be a brighter, more enlightened place for us all.
The first community I experienced outside of my family was an historic, architecturally beautiful downtown Baptist church. There, many decades before, my maternal grandmother met my maternal grandfather while both were newly arrived college students. There, a few years before, my mom and my dad stood before family and friends and pledged their lives and love to one another. I still have family members who are leaders in that august church. We left that church when I was just 4 years old, moved across town to a newly started, younger, more contemporary congregation. But in these waning days of my mom's life, as I find myself sorting through so many memories, I recall the Earl Street Baptist Church with fondness and with gratitude. It was the first place that felt to me like my place, like our place, a home away from home. My religious journey has taken me a long, long ways from that grand old congregation. But it has never required me to burn the bridge back to it. So I can still, more than a half century later, retrieve warm feelings and recollections. My spiritual development was rooted there. And I'd no more deprecate or deride that church than I would dismiss or deny my love for my parents and grandparents who introduced me to it and who were leaders in it. When we are at our best, this is how it is in Unitarian Universalism and in Unitarian Universalist congregations. We say quite explicitly, in naming the sources of our liberating faith, that Jewish and Christian teachings and wisdom from the world's religions have an important role in shaping who we are. Some places may insist on religious homogeneity, a commitment to a singular spiritual pathway. Other places may decry religion altogether, similarly single-minded in their insistence that religion is a detrimental relic from a prior primitive stage in human development. We Unitarian Universalists do neither. We're no more threatened by those with robust religious past than we are by those with no interest in any religion other than Unitarian Universalism. So long as you share a commitment to this community's values, values that require respect for others' religious experiences, you are welcomed here among us. Not often enough do we make space for the positive, the life-giving accounts of our members' prior experiences in other religious communities. Today offers a too brief remedy. What follows are reflections from active members here who will share their celebrations with us, the positive regard that they each have for their religious pasts. Liz Pratt and Michael Amy Sierra and Todd Willems, thank you for bearing witness before us today. We open our hearts to your accounts with gratitude and with deep respect.
I am Liz Pratt, and Richard and I have been members of UUCC since 1978. I was raised as a Reformed Jew in New York in the 1950s. As I look back on my childhood, I realize that being Jewish gave me a grounding that is still with me today. It gave me a set of values of what was important in life. It gave me annual traditions to look forward to, such as seeking the hidden afikomen, which is the matzah, during my favorite holiday, Passover. The traditional Jewish Passover foods, for example, provided the cues that we were part of a worldwide Jewish community. The singing of Passover songs, some in Hebrew, some in English, the same as our relatives in Denver were singing, served as reminders that we were all part of the same culture. I think being part of a minority culture helped me to have empathy for all minorities. But my mother would point out time and time again how we could hide our minority status and others could not, so our challenges were very minor compared to others. It gave us a sense of pride of belonging to a group of people who had a deep history. Especially since we had a small immediate family, being Jewish gave us a sense of belonging to a large worldwide group with values and culture very similar to ours. The important value of family ties was embedded in me, and that value has remained a constant in my life, continuing with Richard and my very cherished roles as parents, uncles, and aunts, and now as grandparents. The golden rule of Judaism, similar to Unitarianism, was an important tenet of my childhood as well. We learned the golden rule, do unto others what you would want them to do unto you, by the examples our parents set for us. For example, we were taught to respect all adults equally. Frances was the African American lady who helped raise us. We were taught to refer to her as our mom's helper. It was made very clear Frances was there to help my mom, but not to help us. We were expected to make our own beds and do our own daily chores posted on the fridge. Recently, I was at our son Stuart's house, and I saw on the side of his fridge a chore chart he had made for his daughters. I realized that the fridge chore chart plan is now in its third generation. Leave the world a better place than you found it was the strongest pillar of my upbringing. My parents demonstrated that value by working hard to help candidates for elected office. and insisted half of our allowance of 25 cents went to charity. I still remember picking that charity. At Halloween, we rang doorbells, of course, asking for candy, but we also carried an empty milk container from school, asking for donations for UNICEF. Reflecting back on my career choice, always teaching in a Title I school, I realized my choice was a very clear reflection of my parents' messages to me. I continue to hear my parents' message to help the world, so I currently try to help political candidates in small ways. Since my parents remembered so much about the Holocaust, as Jews, they felt a strong motivation to make sure we carried on their messages about the horrors of it. My mom befriended Susan Cherniak Spatz when Susan moved into Mom's neighborhood in town many years ago. Mom was one of many, I am sure, who gently encouraged Susan to tell her horrific story of being a Holocaust survivor. 2 generations later, my niece encouraged Susan to speak to her 5th grade class. I will be telling our granddaughters these same stories to be sure these messages remain alive. My parents chose a temple for us to attend that was on the other side of the county, so my involvement there was on a more limited basis due to its proximity to our home and with us having only 1 car and 6 people at home. But I realize today that even with my limited involvement there, similar to the situation today with coronavirus, that religious history is woven into the fabric of our souls and remains an important component of our lives. Because Judaism is a guiding value system for me, Judaism will always be a significant part of who I am, even though I have been very proud to also call myself Unitarian Universalist for 43 years.
Good morning. I am Michael Amy Lynn Rodriguez Steri Sira Shipo Sira. Thank you very much. Okay, so I feel I must confess to y'all right off the bat my spiritual polyamory. Yes, while I have been a loyal and committed member at the UUCC, I continue to participate in other spiritual practices, some of which I'll speak of today. I grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, the child of New Yorkers who moved there when I was a toddler, with a Jewish mother from the Bronx and a Puerto Rican Catholic father. Over the years, my family dabbled in a couple of traditional religious communities until we started sailing on Sundays. But seeking something, I'm not even sure I was certain of what, on my own or sometimes just joining with friends, families, I continued to try on spiritual spaces. It's 1975 or 6. I'm in 7th grade, the sole brown girl in a world of black or white, a stranger in a strange land. When a new girl arrives in class, we bond over Jewish grandmothers and lox and bagels, and soon I am escaping my traumatic home life, spending her divorced dad weekends with her father, a nice Jewish boy from Jersey turned Buddhist, a protege of Choya Trungpa Rinpoche, who encouraged him to open this Dharma Dhatu in the middle of the woods in Blythewood, South Carolina. Wow. Radiant reds and glorious golds, Tonkas and Buddhas and sights I've never seen and something I have never known. This diverse group of people living the teachings that every human being has a fundamental nature of basic goodness. They cared for each other, fed each other, Some worked and supplied money, others built and maintained the property. I learned mantras and how to do prostrations, and her dad tells sacred supernatural stories and teaches me Dharma. All suffering comes from cherishing ourselves more than others, and all happiness comes from cherishing others more than ourselves. And the community is in you, and you are in the community. And I kind of sort of feel like I fit in for the first time. It's 1985 or 6, New York City. I'm an actress and wardrobe mistress for Chippendale's Male Review. Really. Reagan is not acknowledging the AIDS epidemic, and my friends, bewitchingly beautiful, talented, captivating, creative boys, are dying, dropping like flies all around when this young singer, Marianne Williamson, starts leading monthly gatherings, teaching A Course in Miracles in this shame-filled community about a God who loves you no matter what. We commit to the practices. We're gathering weekly, being there for each other with food, safety, support. I get clean. We rally with ACT UP, and I train to go out in the middle of the night to hold people with AIDS in our arms when their parents refuse to be there and their sons were dying alone. I learned service and community are inextricable. It's 1995 or 6, Los Angeles. Marriage ending, doing theater, giving 6 to 8 massages a day. I'm invited to be the first new member in 15 years of a longtime coven, leader in the goddess community. Members, founders of the renowned women's building, feminist Mecca, spearheaded by Judy Chicago. They teach me to connect with nature and the cycles, the craft, and I am, now for something completely different, doing deep spiritual work with women, holding space for each other, caring for each other's families and other people's families, and also creating and gifting magnificent, engaging events for the larger community. Summer solstice festivities with music and stories, with a giant golden sun goddess puppet to give back. I truly believe the desire for community is part of our deepest nature. And as it turns out, that's something I was seeking, I now understand, was community. A sense of community and a sense of my own place in it. Or instead of all that, I could have just shared a favorite reading from my beloved teacher, Starhawk. We are all longing to go to some place we have never been, a place half remembered and half envisioned we can only catch glimpses of from time to time. Somewhere there are people to whom we can speak with passion without having the words catch in our throats. Somewhere a circle of hands will open to receive us. Eyes will light up as we enter. Voices will celebrate with us. Community means strength that joins us to do the work that needs to be done. Arms to hold us when we falter. A circle of healing. A circle of friends. Some place where we can be free. Aho, Ashe, blessed be.
When I was 3 years old, my family moved to South Mississippi. This was 1981. When I met Sherry, my wife, in the early 2000s, I told her about growing up in Long Beach. She assumed she had met a cool kid from Southern California, and I had to inform her that my Long Beach was in Mississippi, which was a much different experience. When my folks got settled in Long Beach, they sought out a church. My mother had a background in the Baptist tradition. My father's family had a background as Mennonites. So they went to a few churches around town, very small town, and they selected the Methodist church. They selected a Methodist church in town. My mother informed me anecdotally over the years that they selected this church because I told them they had the best snacks in the nursery. So we spent a lot of time at this church, and I did. Many different activities, camps, Sunday schools, vacation Bible schools. I mowed the lawn in August in Mississippi, which is incredibly hot. One summer we took a trip as a youth group to find the best swimming hole in Mississippi. And if you're ever in Ellisville, Mississippi, I can point out where it is. And so we did a lot of events. But as I reflect on celebrating community, it's really not about the events. It's about the indelible things. And so there are two things that I took away from that past: people and a verb. So let's start with people. People who directly or indirectly, or even sometimes unintentionally, created space, gave a place for an open dialogue for a young person in Mississippi to talk about things that weren't talked about. And yeah, we ignored and overlooked a lot of stuff. And we didn't take down any flags, but it got a whole lot of people to think about things critically. Religious, binding. And then there's the verb. What if community is a verb? It's an action. It's not a neighborhood. It's not a church. It's not a building. It's not a place. It took things for my folks to participate in that. It took things for me to participate in that. So I celebrate that religious past, which has brought me and us and my young people to community. And I know my past inspires the vision and the mission and the ends that we have here as our community. It's what binds us together.
Caritas et amor, Deus ibi est. Ubi caritas et amor, Deus ibi est. Ubi caritas et amor, Deus ibi est. Congregavit nos in unum Christi amor, congregavit corde diligamus nos in cielo, Ubi caritas et amor Deus vivi est.
Welcome again to each of you, and thank you for participating in our virtual service this morning. Welcome especially if you are a guest of our congregation. If you're not accustomed to being a part of us in some way, we're very glad that you are here. We'd love to connect with you, share some information with you, find out why you might be interested in being a part of our community. You can connect with our membership coordinator, Kelly Green, through email. Her email is Kelly, Kelly, at UUCCharlotte.org. For our guests and for our members, I commend our electronic newsletter, Currents. There you'll find much more about the life of our congregation, including the activities that are going on in the coming days. As we explore our theme this summer of celebrating community, our adult religious education and spiritual development team has created a number of ways for us to gather these one-time conversations around what they are calling our common love. You'll find information about some of those conversations that are coming up right away around poetry, around hiking, around baseball, and other things that we share as common loves. We'll simply gather in a virtual way and share in conversation about how this love became a part of us and how being a part of these particular communities shape who we are. Again, you can find much more about that in Currents. You can find more about the life of this congregation, both within and outside of our walls there as well. We continue on this day in concern. We're deeply concerned for the ever-expanding impact of the raging pandemic in our nation. We're aware that as this pandemic continues, more and more of our lives are being touched directly by the impact of this virus. We hold one another with love. We hold our community with love. We hold our healthcare workers with gratitude. We share in this common concern as a community. We're also deeply aware of, and in many of our cases, deeply involved in the social unrest in our nation. Despite the claim of some that this is trying to undo who we are as a country, we know that this is a way of aspiring to never realized ideals within our nation. We hold organizers and activists with love and with concern and with deep gratitude. We hold those exploring new pathways, including breaking down the old ways, with gratitude in these times. We exist in part as a community to share our love with one another. We hold, especially on this day, the many friends and the family of our member Dot Miles, who died this week. Dot was such a delightful presence in our congregation for several years. We hold those who grieve Dot's death with love on this day. We continue to remember others in our congregation who are grieving deeply. We remember those of you who are alone and feeling especially lonely in these times. We hold with compassion those of you struggling, who've lost jobs, who are struggling to find a new way in this time. We hold our youth and our children with love, aware that the impact of this pandemic is deep in their lives. We are a community. We reach out our arms in love to one another on this day. Part of what sustains our community is your remarkable generosity. Thank you so much to so many of you who continue in your generous financial support of our congregation. We could not exist without you. We rely on your generosity. Thanks to those of you who not only made generous pledges, but who are making regular payments on generous pledges. Thanks to those of you who are adding payments in this time, who are sharing since you can with this congregation. We're deeply grateful for you as well. I invite you to join me in a time of meditation and aspiration, the opportunity for us to breathe deeply together. I invite you to settle into wherever you are viewing this service, to calm yourself, to deepen your breathing, and to close your eyes. Spirit of life and of love, today we acknowledge none of us is self-made. Each of our lives bears the imprint of others, other people, other places, other communities. For all who have inspired and challenged us, encouraged and supported us, taught and believed in us, we pause in thanks on this day. For life shaped into community, for life more expansive than personal preference and individual inclination, for impact beyond what we ourselves can do, for those upon whom we can lean, and for those who rely upon us. We pause in thanks on this day. Into our hearts have been sung other songs. Into our souls have been shared other stories. Into our minds, our thoughts, other ways of seeing the world have been imparted. And we are enriched and expanded by this wealth. And so we pause in thanks on this day. May the most deeply held of our shared values call us ever to respect and compassion where others' religious commitments are concerned. May we never become so narrow as to imagine that our way is the only way, or even that ours is the superior, supreme view of things. May humility temper all claims of our liberating faith, mindful that we are sourced by many stories from many different faiths. May we ever strive to be a place of welcome, where a mere baseline of tolerance and acceptance becomes in us generous expressions of curiosity and care, and above all, kindness and compassion. These things we pray in the name of all that we hold as good and true and beautiful. Amen. And now may we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and in miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. Go with courage. Go with courage until we meet again.